Welcome to the Anchor Your Retirement podcast. I am your host, Barbara Gullen, hanging out with my buddy and pal, Tony Shore. Both of us lamenting that we no longer have a local team in the NCAA brackets. And even though this is going to run like a week late, this is after the first day of play, people.
Yeah, it's not great.
No, it isn't.
There went the bracket.
Well
That was the sound
said.
of my bracket just shattering.
Well, and I didn't even fill out a bracket this year. I will, like I told you off air right before we started recording, only like 0.27% of all of the brackets that are submitted with ESPN or whoever does that are still intact.
Right. Isn't that
0.27%.
crazy?
It's
0.2.
0.27. Yeah, it's unbelievable. But while we were sitting there watching KU lose last night, and by we I mean me and my significant other, he told me that he read somewhere that if you go in, and I am not advocating betting or gambling in any way, so do not take this as advice to go out
Right.
and do
And I
this.
know what you're going to say because I know about this.
If you went in and supported the underdog, thought that the underdog was going to win in every contest, you would end up coming out ahead if you were actually betting money versus going.
I thought you were saying something else. If somebody had a perfect bracket, there's a guy, or I don't know if it's a billionaire or what it is. I can't remember the article. I read about it last year, but they do this every year. You could win $1 billion.
Holy cow.
Or something crazy. I mean, it's crazy.
That's
maybe some of our listeners have heard about that. But yeah, I mean, brackets are so hard. I mean, because there's always upsets. So it's not like you can go pick the rankings aren't going to help you, right? I mean, sometimes the 1 and 2 make it further or all the way, but usually it's upsets, right?
Okay, and you know that I have this like neurodivergent math brain, right?
Right. That's why you do what you do, Barb. Help people with their finances and
I'm sitting here thinking, for $1 billion, how long would it take me to fill out brackets with every possible statistical outcome?
Right.
And
you can only submit one though to this. You have to submit it to. You can't.
Well, I figured you had to submit it, but the whole that you can only submit one is kind of a kicker there. So never mind.
But you're right in your way of thinking. Like, I wonder how many different possibilities there are. It would probably be a lot because there's a lot of teams.
I think. Again,
you could figure it out if you knew how many teams.
And I think it's 66 factorial because you have 2 teams that play in to get to the 64. And the factorial, for those of you that are not math nerds, is 66 times 65 times 64 times 63 all the way down to 1.
Oh wow, okay, factorial,
okay.
Yeah. 66 factorial. Okay, I get what that means.
I'm kind of thinking it's got to be divided by something.
Yeah. Well, we're not gonna figure it out here. And I'm sure there's some listener out there going, "Oh, I know this." They'll comment or something.
Yeah, correct my math, please.
They'll research it for us. So, Barb, I know that next week you're traveling, right, with family or to see family, right?
Well, actually going down to see clients.
Oh, you are? Okay. That's right. You have clients in Texas, right?
Yep, I went and saw family a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
So,
and
today,
then the week after that,
right,
I get to come up to Minneapolis and help teach Life University.
Yeah, you've been asked to teach at a financial conference up here in Minneapolis, and we're going to record a show together in person in the main in the podcast room. So people will get to see the new digs that we have up there. So you and I
excited.
We'll record a show while you're up here. So
Cool.
That'll be great. We have a new studio, not the studio that Barb or I are in now. I'm in my
Mhm,
home studio, as people can see my music
mhm.
collection behind me. But we have a big new podcast studio at Gradient. It's awesome. The lighting, everything is great. So we'll be there in a couple of weeks, right?
I can't wait. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be good. Now, today we're talking about an important topic that I'm glad you brought this up, Barb,
Mhm,
because people are like, why should I work with a financial advisor? I can just, get input from friends or advice
mhm.
from family, or I can Google it, right? And then I'll have a good retirement plan and know what to do with my money. But it
And
doesn't
more
work that way.
importantly, how do I know how to choose a financial advisor? And
Right.
what should I be looking for or not looking for?
Right. But there have been studies done. I know that, and I forget if it was Columbia, or a number of studies have been done. I know JP Morgan did a study as well, and maybe Schwab, and a university where they look at people who did it themselves versus
Mhm,
worked with a financial advisor.
mhm.
And minimum, I think on average, you do better with.
JP Morgan does that
Yeah,
study.
and they do it, and they redo it every year to see where it's
Yep,
at,
and they
or
look
every
at
so often, right?
asset classes over
Yeah.
the prior 20
Yeah,
years.
you're gonna make I mean, in their numbers, according to them, you're gonna end up at least 3% ahead, but as you know from people coming in, people make expensive mistakes. I
They do,
mean, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars mistakes as far as taxes and
they do,
planning and
they
yeah,
do.
yeah, so
So,
what are the do's and
it's
don'ts of picking one, though? How do I
yeah,
pick the right
yeah.
person? I mean,
Um,
obviously, if we go by looks, it's Barb Gullen. I mean, if you're just going by looks alone and
you're
personality,
biased. You are
looks,
biased.
it's Barb. Personality, it's Barb. So I don't understand. Is there more to looks and personality with this?
Uh, okay, I'm thinking of a song from a chorus line that
Chorus line.
we can't say the title of the song on this podcast because it's family friendly. But
Yep.
if you're familiar with the musical, you
Oh
know
yeah.
which song I'm
Oh,
talking about.
I know the soundtrack to A Chorus Line. I know what
Yes,
song you're talking about.
we're showing our age. But
Yeah,
anyway,
we
um,
are. A
I'm
Chorus Line, that hasn't been on Broadway maybe in a while, I don't know.
no, no, but okay, back to this. The first thing you want to do, number 1, is look for somebody who is a fiduciary.
Mm,
Okay, choosing somebody that is insurance licensed only or that is working for a brokerage has a very limited set of tools and options. If all you own is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And
I
that's
love
not
that, yeah.
necessarily what you want for somebody who's managing your finances or
Right?
helping you to try to plan your future in your retirement.
Mhm.
So the first thing you want to do is look for somebody who is a fiduciary. You can, first of all, you can do this by asking the person.
Yeah, that's a good are you a fiduciary? That's a great
Mhm.
first question to ask. But and maybe you're gonna do this, but before we go too deep, can you explain to our listeners what's that word mean? Why is that important?
A fiduciary is somebody who holds a license that requires that person to make decisions that are in your best interests and not necessarily providing solutions that make them the most money.
Right.
And interestingly, somebody who is only an insurance agent or who is only a broker is not held to the same fiduciary standard as somebody who is an investment advisor. And there is specific credentialing for somebody to call themselves an investment advisor. I have found in the past quite a few insurance agents who are insurance only referring to themselves as advisors, and they're not.
Or financial planners, and they don't
Yes,
have the
right.
licensure or fiduciary status to do that.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of so-called financial planners out there, and not to we're not putting down having investments or having insurance, but if you work with an independent financial advisor, they are
Mhm.
going to be licensed, and if they're a fiduciary in these areas, and they're
Mhm.
going to be able to help you and look at the whole big picture. Is
Right.
your broker, who a stockbroker, going to help you with one of the big stock brokerages? Are they going to
Mhm.
help you maximize your Social Security, or do your tax plan, help you
Right.
plan
Right.
taxes for retirement?
Mhm.
Are they going to help you know how to create retirement income using
Mhm.
something other than, or have all your eggs in one basket in the stock market? Isn't the best
Right.
idea, right?
Right. And if you want to do some research before you meet with somebody, you can go to FINRA's broker check website. And if you just do a search for FINRA broker check, it will be the one that shows up at the top. FINRA is the regulatory agency that looks after all of the people who are working in the financial services field that have a license to sell securities products.
Right.
If you don't find somebody in FINRA broker check when you're searching for them, most likely they are insurance only.
Yeah.
And then you would have to go to your state's website
Yeah.
to try to
Then
do some
if they're not
research.
in the FINRA database, they're not a fiduciary, and they're not held to those standards. And you are audited and
Consistent.
held to those fiduciary standards. That's what the word fiduciary means. It means
Right.
that you have to make the best decisions, the decision
Mhm.
that's going to be best for your clients, not
Right.
for you. Right.
Right.
The problem with insurance only people is they might be a salesperson, and they might say, hey, this roughly suits your needs, and this one gets me the most commission. They don't say that, but that's
Right.
why I'm going to recommend that. You, on the other hand, or fee-based advisors, can say, hey, these are what's in your best interest
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
You should do this, or for your future. Yeah.
Right. And people who are insurance only do not have the credentials to offer investment advice.
Right.
And that includes whether or not you should roll over your 401k into another product,
Right.
or how you should allocate your 401k, or anything on the investment side of things,
Yeah.
anything that's based in the market.
Yeah. Yeah, what amazes me is how there are people on the radio and television who are giving
Mhm.
investment advice who are not fiduciaries, and
They aren't,
they should not be doing that.
and a lot of the bigger names that just popped into people's minds when you said that
Mhm.
don't carry any licenses at all anymore.
Period.
And
Yeah.
part of that is because with compliance, they are regulated with what they can and can't say. And part of it is, I'm sure they don't want to be in a position where they could be held legally liable for what they say.
Right.
I mean, it's not even that they've said it, it's how somebody has interpreted what they said.
Right.
Many, many years ago, we had a couple come into our office that followed a very well-known um, debt snowball, get out of debt
Yep.
kind of
Person.
radio
Yep.
personality who is
Yep.
well known.
Yep.
We could throw out initials, but I really don't
No.
even know that we need to do that.
No, we don't. No, we
Their
don't, and we shouldn't. But
and
and
their interpretation of what he said was that they should cash in their retirement to pay off their house so
oh,
that they could go on said radio program and do the debt-free cheer.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
And
he's great at getting helping people get out of debt
he is.
and live debt free,
He's got some really great
and
ideas.
that is, and that part of what they do, and I love people who do that. There are a number of personalities out there
Mhm,
who are really great at helping people with that, and I
mhm.
applaud that. But
Yes.
when that same person starts talking about investment advice,
Mhm,
or taking a retirement fund and
mhm.
using it to pay off a low interest mortgage, like
Well,
my mortgage is 3% or 2.9, right? I
and
would
yeah.
be crazy.
Mhm,
My wife and I know financially it would be from you and things you've said,
mhm.
and just from good fiduciary advice. you should never take your retirement savings and pay off the house if you've got a 3%
Right.
loan,
And
because
it
you're using the bank's money for almost free.
right.
And my retirement funds on average are earning way more than that. So
Mhm.
financially, it's going to derail your retirement.
Yep, and as
And
much as I am not a fan of this broadcaster, I know he has never told anybody to cash in their retirement to pay off a house
right.
because
Hopefully
it
he's never said that, but it's
right.
implied that you should do whatever it takes to get out of
Right.
debt. And so
Right.
people can take that too far. But
Mhm.
also that person has given advice on investments and insurance. And
He has. He has.
that's the dangerous territory. Yeah.
Right.
For somebody who's
Right.
not a fiduciary. And that's what scares me.
It scares me a lot
So
too.
don't just assume because it's a well-known name or it's somebody who's helpful in another area that their advice is golden. Don't just take some talking head uh, for
Right.
opinion. Find out if they're a fiduciary first of all, and if
Mhm.
everything they're going to tell you is in your best interest. And to do that, they would have to get to know you.
They would,
They
and
can't just do that by throwing
no.
out blanket, oh, you should never use this
Mhm.
financial vehicle. You should never
Mhm.
use that. Unless they know your personal situation, they don't know.
Right. And, let's so that we'll call that the first don't.
Yeah.
Um,
We
the s
hammered that one home.
we did.
We don't have time for any more. Sorry, Barb. Bye.
The second don't, I would say, is don't make a decision based on what the office looks like or on the fact that you think this person is a nice human being.
Right.
You want to do their due diligence. If they are a fiduciary, they should be furnishing you with their firm's brochure if it's an investment advisory firm.
Hmm.
They should be giving you their firm's brochure, which will be called an ADV Parts 2A and B. They should be giving that to you on request. We give it to all of our clients on their first meeting with us. And we set up most of our clients with a generational vault. There's a couple that don't have computers. Okay. But we also have it set up so that our ADV is automatically loaded into their generational vault every
So they can
year when
log
it
in
gets updated.
anytime and look at it. Right.
Right, and that
Yeah.
ADV is going to show you the good, the bad, the ugly.
Right.
If an advisor has a complaint, it is gonna be on that ADV.
Yep.
It's gonna show you how long the advisor has been in business, and Broker Check will show you all of these things too, but
Yeah.
it is important that you get that you do your due diligence. You are handing over your nest egg, people.
Yeah, it's serious. And I do your due diligence. Make sure they
Mm,
give you that form, and don't base it. So number two is don't base it on appearance or hey, I think
right,
this person is nice. Although I think a do is make sure you're compatible. I mean,
agreed,
yeah, if you don't like,
agreed.
if the person is rude or you don't like the way they come across, sometimes maybe
Mhm,
they're not the best fit for you, but because you need to be able to work with them and probably for a long period of time.
mhm.
So,
Yes.
um, and you have to be able to trust that person. But I joked at the beginning, you don't base it on appearance of their
No.
offices. Well, this guy has a really big office, or they have ads on TV.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
hey, TV ads are great. You have to promote your
mhm.
business, Barb. You promote
Yes.
your business. We do a
Mhm,
podcast, but I'll tell you what, just because you see a lot of ads on TV doesn't mean
mhm.
don't let that legitimize it. You still have to find out if they're a fiduciary. You still
You
have to
do.
find out if they're a good fit for you and talk to them about your goals and see if they get you and where you're at, right?
Right. And the next thing you want to do is to be honest with whoever you are considering. You want to make sure that you outline all of your assets,
Yep.
especially if it is a fiduciary. They're going to need to find out what your risk tolerance is.
Hmm.
And they are going to make those recommendations based on your risk tolerance and based on what you tell them you have.
Hmm.
So if you are concealing, if you're hiding that you might not want to tell them all of the assets that you have up front. I can understand that to an extent,
Sure.
but it's the more transparent you are, the more qualified their advice is going to be. But most importantly, if you are concealing unknown debt or,
Right.
undisclosed debt, can derail a financial plan faster than you can sneeze.
Yeah. Yeah, they have
So,
to know everything to know, help you and know where you're at and help you know
mhm,
when to retire and what to save and where to have your money. If you're not telling them things, it's not gonna work
right.
out. Right.
And a fiduciary has the responsibility to keep this information confidential.
Yeah.
They are not going to go to their next client. They are not going to go to the person that may have referred you and say, "Did you know that they have this, 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 and this?"
Oh, yeah,
It's
no.
nobody's business.
Nope.
Um, so, find somebody that you're comfortable being transparent with.
Yeah,
If you feel like you need to conceal something from that advisor, my question is whether or not you should really be working with that advisor.
sure. Yeah.
The next do I am going to say is do get your kids or your family involved in at least part of the process.
Especially your spouse, right?
Oh,
Isn't that
spouses, yes, yes. But when we're talking about generational plans, and when
sure.
we are it is from a protection standpoint, it
Mhm.
is important. Your kids don't have to know all of the dirty details of what you do and don't have.
Right.
But considering that your kids are probably going to be a backup power of attorney secondary
Yeah.
to your spouse,
It'll help if they know what's going on. Communication is
it
key. I
is.
saw I
And
saw it ruin, when my grandfather passed.
yeah.
He had communicated only with one child who was the executor of the will,
Mhm.
but none of the other there were 4 children, and none of
Mhm.
the other 4 knew what was going on.
Yes. The kids at least need to know who to call.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I'm a little lighthearted about it. Death is an inevitability. I hate to
Right.
break it to y'all, but there's
Right.
100% mortality rate in our population.
Huh. Well,
And
I'm not aging though. So
neither am I.
what
Neither am I.
yeah.
Um, just we're the new Dorian Grays. Anyway, no,
Right.
strike that. Those of you that have read the book, not a good correlation.
No, not a
But
great
uh,
comparison.
no. But I tell my clients, they're like, "What do we do if something happens to us?" I'm like, "You tell your kids to call your pastor, call the undertaker, and then call me."
Yep.
Plain
That
and simple. It under having somebody that they can go to, preferably one person who has helped coordinate everything and who can have a relationship with the estate planning attorney and a relationship with the accountant
and
will
that's what
make
you do for your clients,
we do.
right?
And yeah, and that makes transferring assets or sharing information that much easier. It's when you lose somebody, it is a difficult time. And as I mentioned at my Wine Women and Wealth event a couple of weeks ago, you want to be planning for a crisis, not in a crisis.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great lesson. So communication, make sure that first of all, you need a financial advisor.
Mhm,
Second of all, make sure they're a fiduciary.
mhm,
And yeah, I think communication with your family members, you have
mhm,
to include your spouse. One person, if you're a couple, it can't
mhm.
be all one person or it's not going to
N-
work.
No, the caveat there is sometimes, we work with people who are in second marriages,
Sure.
and that couple has gone into that marriage intentionally keeping their finances
Sure.
separate.
I suppose, yeah, I'm just yeah.
So,
I've been married for 30 years, so it's
and that's impressive.
I just I never think about things that way. But sure, there are different relationships. So I guess you do need to make sure that it fits you. But you know what? I think it's just good to know, but make sure you're communicating with that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes for the sake of preserving wealth transfer, they keep the finances separate. If they've both lost a spouse through death and they are married, they marry each other. You don't necessarily want your new spouse to get your life insurance policy or your 401k. So you
Right.
keep the beneficiary designations with your kids. And you may need a trust to ensure that happens. Things with beneficiary designations don't usually go through probate or any of that. But, if you move into one or the other's home, if the person who owns the home passes away, how long does that surviving spouse get to stay in the house?
Mhm.
Those are all things that are not comfortable to talk about, but need
Right.
to be talked about. That's probably a whole other show unto
Yeah.
itself.
I would
Um,
say another one really quick, if I can
of
interject,
course.
as we're winding up, but one thing that I think you should look for, and this is where you excel, Barb, is a lot of our listeners out there. I need to work with somebody who understands federal benefits because I'm a federal employee or a
Right.
federal worker or a state worker. I need to work with somebody who also is going to incorporate healthcare and Medicare and
Mhm.
inflation. If you have an advisor that isn't talking to you about these things, and that doesn't come up, that's a problem. I would say that might be a red flag. And you do work closely with estate planning attorneys,
Mhm.
Medicare specialists, and you
Mhm.
have all these resources. And I think that's fantastic. And that's really the kind of financial advisor you need to
Mhm.
make sure, especially as you get older,
Mhm.
and head toward retirement or in retirement. It's critical.
Yep. And the last do is to look for an advisor who is independent, who is not, the opposite of that is captive. Captive
To a
means,
big box, yeah, just
right.
a big box, a chain,
Mhm.
the big box chains, because they're going to be limited to just their offerings that their company has,
Right.
not look at all the companies and say, or all the possibilities and say, well, you
Mhm.
should have this over here. This offering is much better, right? Isn't that
Right.
where you're headed?
Right. You want somebody who can pursue what the best product is to suit your needs, the best tool to accomplish the goal. You don't, it's when I've known people who worked for captive agencies, and it's like, well, why are you selling that product? Well, it's the only thing I have to sell you. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's not necessarily a bad product,
Oh,
but
yeah,
it might
no.
not be the right product for you.
Yes, and your situation. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it makes a big difference as somebody who's independent who can look at all the options and not be limited, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well,
Very
I
true.
this is fantastic, Barb, and I just encourage our listeners, whether it's you or somebody else, they need to work with a trusted financial
Yes, they
professional.
do.
And I'm not going to name names, Barb Gullen, but I know somebody that you should call first, and maybe get a second opinion if you're already working with someone. But I want to give out your number where they can call you. You're offering complimentary. There's no charge, no obligation
Mhm.
consultations, and
Yep.
you run reports, can show them where they're at, where their risk profile's at, see
Yep.
what their personal risk tolerance is. I think that's
Mhm.
great. And that number is 913-553-6222.
Mhm.
913-553-6222. Or the web address is bgwealthmanagement.com. It's easy. B as in boy, G as in Gullen, wealthmanagement.com, right?
Or B as in boy, G as in girl.
Yeah, there. Oh, why didn't I think of that? Yeah. Wow, I'm slow today. That's much better.
Well, you stayed up too late watching basketball teams that
I
we
did
thought
watch it.
were gonna win lose. We're looking at you, KU and MU.
uh,
Just saying.
well, yeah, it's not being from Minnesota. I don't need to worry about that. We're never
You
in it.
don't.
So,
You don't.
but well, Barb, that's great and great show today. Listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Anchor Your Retirement with our host, Barb Gullen.
We'll see you soon.